Welcome to the EverydayFI podcast. I'm your host, Meghan Combs, a personal finance junkie who learned from all of life's money mistakes. Come with me as I explore the incredible stories of those on the path to financial independence. Plus, I'll teach you how to start your own journey. Are you ready? Thank you for joining me today. We are going to dive into Justin's FI journey. So, hi, Justin. Can you introduce yourself for us?
Sure. Hi, Megan. And thanks so much for having me. I think this is just a lot of fun. So a little bit of background. I am originally from Washington State. I call the Seattle area home. I've been married to 34 years, very happily. And we have two fabulous kids, age 24 and 22. My previous career was in hospitality and logistics. So I did 20 years active duty Air Force and then 10 years as a Department of Defense civilian at the Pentagon. So yeah, I retired at age 52 in 2020. And 2 years later, my wife fired from her elementary teaching school position at age 52 also. So we have kind of in that period become minimalists, and we just really love that. Travel was hugely important to us, so we sold or gave away all our stuff except for a few bins stored in my friend's basement, and we turned our home into a second rental unit, and now we travel the world full time.
It's amazing that you actually got to retire early at 52. I mean, I know so many people in our audience are probably really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I just was going to just share just a few kind of early influences that really kind of helped shape my thinking about money, which I think has just kind of been an important part of, how we've kind of moved along our financial journey, and then, why FI was so important to us. And really the big one is the economic troubles of the early 1980s. So in 79, 80, 81, 82, they just had a huge outsized influence on me. Inflation was, 14% at its peak. The mortgage interest rate was 19%. Unemployment hit nationally at 11%. And in our county that we lived in was particularly hit. It was like 25% unemployment. And so during this time, my dad was unemployed for a year and a half. And even after that, he struggled to, really get a full-time employment after that. So just all that, just a lot of cutting back. We can't spend, we can't, do whatever. And you just feel it from a national sense. I mean, I was, watching the news and seeing all this talk about, how tough things were. And all this just really helped ingrain in me this fear-based scarcity mindset, hold on to everything.
Mm-hmm. And how old were you at this time?
10 to 12 years old at the time, which sounds really young, but I was one of those kids kind of keeping aware of what was going on. I knew the price of silver. Oddly enough, I didn't really have a role model for savings and investing. My dad's investment strategy could kind of be summed up as he bought a few penny stocks and he would literally buy silver coins and bury them in the yard in a bucket. I mean, I kid you not. And we kind of wonder if there's still a bucket out there. So I, just paid my way through college. So mostly working and a couple of small Pell Grants, and took out some student loans, about 5,000 back at the time, which is about 14,000 today. So really not relatively, not too much. And then, I had to rely on some credit cards to cover cash flow gaps. But even at that point in time, it's like credit card bad. I mean, I really just worked to not get into huge credit card debt, but I still had some. My wife and I were married between our junior and senior year of college, and luckily we both had developed frugal values. So early on, we figured out ways to enjoy life without spending a lot of money. I mean, even from the start, our honeymoon, we borrowed her parents' car. We drove from Seattle up to Vancouver and Victoria, and we had borrowed a friend's entertainment coupon book. I don't know if you remember these. Used to be these big, sizable books. I don't know. They cost. It was like $35, but we're not going to shell that out as college students. But you get 50% off hotels and restaurants. So this is how we're going to enjoy our honeymoon. And it was a short, it's a long weekend. it fit with what we had, and it fit, and it kind of just fit our style. Like, you can figure out ways to just have a really enjoyable life, but not spend a lot of money. So that's really kind of just, as time went on, we didn't know about FI, but we figured out a lot of the basics. I mean, we always spent less than we earned. We certainly paid off the student loans. Like, first year with the student loans, credit cards paid off, and we never carried a balance ever since. So yeah, our first savings was pretty good. For the first 5 years, we had our first 100,000 saved up, which was equivalent about 200,000 today.
And how old were you when you'd saved up 100,000?
I was 26.
That's great. You were just a year older than Tori Dunlap, because she had the first 100K under 25. But that's really good. I didn't save my.
But inflation wise,
it was 200K. Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. Good job. Yeah, I didn't save my first 100K until like a year ago, and I'm 37. So that's awesome. So how did you find financial independence? Like, what drew you to this concept, and actually just what drew you to, a high savings rate and being this frugal in general? I know you talked a lot about your childhood, but is there anything in that experience that really is what drew you to this movement, to saving so much?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I just really had this fear scarcity mindset. I mean, so, in the, as we, worked through the military, my, like, soon after we'd saved up the money, we decided for my wife to stay at home when she went to graduate school, and then with our kids before they started full-time school. So that was, kind of a big slowdown of our, progress. It's just, 1987 was a big, downturn, and the Y2K, the big tech bubble burst. So it's like every time I would try to like get into investing, I just didn't have the mentality to weather the market drops. So I'd stay in just long enough. It would drop a lot, and I'm finally like, no, I got to get out of this. And so I'd get out at the worst time, and then I was really slow to get back in. Like, no, this is, I got burned. But then you're like, it just keeps going, so I better get back in. So I get back in, and yeah, I did this in 2008 as well. It's just it's like, so I was like my own worst enemy on that. Even though I knew I needed to invest, I basically knew we need to hold, but I just couldn't get past my own fear, scarcity mindset to do that. I think just a kind of a good example of this mindset was when I was retiring from the Air Force in 2011. Everybody, like all my mentors, everybody said, you should take a break. Don't go work right away. This is like a rare opportunity that you can just not work. And don't worry, there will be a job for you. And I just couldn't see past that. No, I need a job. I mean, I was applying for jobs well before I got out. And I lined up this job that I basically said, okay, the day after I retired, like the Friday I retired, the next Monday I started the work. And I overlapped that work with like 2 months of leave. I had like what they call terminal leave. At the end of your job, I like burned 2 months, 60 days of leave. But I worked full time in the next job because I just couldn't like let it go. That's where the FI movement, when I found it, was like, oh my God, these are my people. this is the mindset, but it really filled in the pieces that I was missing.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to draw a little bit to the point of, that mindset around money, and how really money psychology comes into play so much, because, some people say, oh, it's just a math problem. It's just a math problem. You just need to, save as much as you can, spend less than you earn, blah, blah, blah. It's a math problem. It's not. I mean, psychology is so strong, and behaviors are so strong. And it's obvious. I mean, you were somebody who was, money minded, like you were very in tune with money and saving, and you already knew how to do that, even at a time like in the 80s. Not everybody, there was no internet, right? So like knowing about investing was kind of rare. And the fact that you even knew that was just a step above, but you still had this fear of the stock market going down, even though, people could tell you, oh, if you stay in, you would have made so much money. It doesn't matter when you see your balance cut in half, or I forget the drop, the day drop in 1987 was what, like in the 30%. It was like super.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it was only in one day. Like people are like, oh, 30% doesn't sound bad. No, it's one day it went down 30%. Like that's a lot, y'all.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just want to draw that, really emphasize that point that money psychology is really, really important. And we cannot just be flippant about, oh, it's just a math problem, because that's not true.
It's really not. I mean, and that's just a big part of like what the community has like provided for me. People seeing other people actually do it, realizing like, no, this isn't crazy. I'm not alone. It really does and can work. So I think one of your questions, I'm sorry, I kind of was mixing through, was like, how did I find financial independence? And really, like the first glimpse was in 2017. I was reading this article about JP Livingston, and she was 29 and she had like 2.3 million saved up and she was retired. And so I was like, oh, okay, why don't you do that? That sounds pretty cool. And I went to her blog, The Money Habit, and it's like, okay, she went through the basic FIRE formula, but she had a New York high finance paying job and her husband still worked. And it's like, okay. So it was like the seed planted, but it didn't quite like germinate yet. And then in spring of 2018, I'm like driving home from a college visit with my son. So he's touring a campus and we're driving back, and it's, I don't know, Sunday, whatever. And I quip like, I just wish I didn't have to go to work tomorrow. And my son just like, without a blink, he's like, well, then quit. You've got a military pension. You don't have to work. And he was just like, and my immediate response was just, again, my own mental response, like, no, my pension, it really just kind of covers the mortgage, but we've got a lot of other bills to pay, and Social Security is not going to be around. And so I'll probably have to work until I'm age 70. And I honestly believe that, I really did have to work until late 60s, maybe 70. He just wasn't phased. It's like, well, then move to a cheaper country. It's like, yeah, he just wouldn't let it go. And I love that. And he just got me thinking, I'm like, well, all right, so maybe another country won't work, but there has got to be a way. And that's when I just kind of went back home and I searched how to retire on a military pension, and went back to The Money Habit and just kind of noticed there's some other blogs out there. And then I quickly bumped into Choose FI. They hadn't been going that long, and that was the aha moment where I'm just like listening and just realizing, oh, there's lots of people that are figuring this out. And then I read Your Money or Your Life and A Simple Path to Wealth and just tons of other books and blogs and podcasts. And it's just been exciting, ever since, to just have that aha moment. So I built a 5-year plan. And since we were already FI at that point, it just quickly morphed into a 2-year off-ramp strategy, really more working on the psychology than the finances part. Although I got to give JL Collins credit for helping me with those investing problems. I did write one of the essays in his Pathfinders books, just about my investing mistakes, and where he helped me turn that around. Again, it was just a psychology of money thing.
Oh, wow. So you're one of the stories in his Pathfinders book? That is so cool. We have a celebrity here, y'all. My biggest dream is to meet Dale Collins and to just talk to him and have his soothing voice just permeate my world, because
yes.
I love his voice so much. I'm going to actually put a link in the show notes to A, his Pathfinders book, B, his Simple Path to Wealth book, and also his guided meditation when the stock market is crashing. Real quick, I want to go back to when you said that you found JP Livingston and you saw that she retired at 29 and had millions of dollars, but it didn't really resonate with you because she was in high finance. I want to go back to that because I wonder if other people in the audience have similar introductions to the financial independence movement, because I actually found Mr. Money Mustache when I was about 25, and I did not resonate with his message at all. And it's funny because almost everybody says they love him and that's how they got started. But when I was 25, I was living in New York City and I was living on $25,000 a year, which is hard. And then when he said, live on half your salary, I was like, dude, I can barely even pay my rent. This is not for me. And I just ignored it and moved on and didn't find FIRE again until, Choose FI. And so I wonder if there are other people in the audience that feel the same way, because sometimes you have to find that story that resonates with you, which is one of the reasons why I want to do this podcast. Is I feel like if somebody could listen to you or other people that I'm interviewing and actually be like, oh, here it is, here's how this person did it, and they sound exactly like me, and now I feel like I can do it. That's like my whole raison d'etre of this podcast. So thank you for saying that. Okay, so what strategy, after you found the financial independence movement and your son is kind of, pushing you, saying, well, you could do this and you could do this and you could do this. So what strategy did you actually use to reach financial independence? Was it stock market? Was it real estate? Was it starting a business? Was it something else?
We kind of did 3 different things. So it was investments. We also did real estate, and it's not, we didn't do investment real estate per se. We bought our house and lived in our house and then decided to keep it and rent it out afterwards, and then buy another house. So at the most I've ever had 2 rental houses at any one time. And I'm, one of the few voices that actually your own personal home is an investment, and you can it's actually a good thing to buy a house if you keep it for a long time. So if you're willing to rent it out, if you're going to be moving or whatever, you have to keep it a long time. If you're not going to keep it for more than probably 7 to 10 years, then yeah, don't buy. But long term, just all the inflationary effects. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent.
No, I actually would like you to say more about that, because there is a lot of, information out there in the financial community, not just financial independence, but the financial community, about not buying a home and how buying a home is not an investment. And so I'd like to hear your perspective on the alternative, that it can actually be an investment.
Sure, yeah. And this is I've got 13 posts on my blog, and this is one of them. And really my blog's kind of like this little repository of just, mental conversations that I have with podcasters and stuff out there. So I'll listen to something, I'll hear all this, I'll read, and there's oh, your home's not a great investment. So and that's really what this post is a response primarily to Jill Collins and his formula when he's, he has that article, Your House is a Terrible Investment, and Go Curry Cracker and Brad Bear and stuff. There's a lot of them out there oh yeah, renting is the better way. And where I felt that there was a gap, kind of a missing point, was with the inflation. Because, J.O. Collins quickly goes, your mortgage inflates because your insurance and your taxes go up. It does, but it inflates at a much smaller rate than rent inflates, because you rent's on the whole thing, but your principal and interest stays the same. Your housing payment is not that much more years later than what you started with. It does go up, absolutely. But so it's part of this running a race. It's we really need to run a race. So I got this whole spreadsheet on there that kind of okay, let's give it a 12% return on investment in the stock market, all the opportunity costs against a house. Because the other thing about a house is housing real estate goes up about 3% per year, but it's 3% on the entire price of the house. So you put in a $100,000 down payment, you're looking at the return on $100,000 you would have done in the stock market. But the $500,000 house you actually bought, you get all 3% return. So both of those turn out to be the same. 12% on 100,000 is the same as 3% on 500,000. It's the same amount of growth. So, I just kind of ran that through, and my 2 houses, doing all the actual maintenance costs and everything that I just line up. I mean, we one of them, we were in the good after 3 years, and the other was 7 years. I mean, so it, and we're, one was in a not very growing market in Ohio, and the other was in a fast growing, outside of DC and Virginia. So it's okay, 2 different opportunities. So it's really the formula that I get into.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, what it comes down to is, if you stay in your home or own your home for a long period of time, it can be an investment. It's when you are churning and burning through buying homes is when you start to lose money. Is that what I'm hearing? Absolutely.
I mean, it's just when you buy a stock market, you don't sell your stock in 3 years. That's not how the market works. Well, when you have to look at the market of housing and what the investment, time frame is. You have to treat your house like it's a long-term investment. And so you don't sell, you hold, you buy and hold, and then you also treat it like an investment. If I rented it out to somebody else other than renting it to myself, would I put in new cabinets? If I would, okay, put in new cabinets because that's a good rental management investment. But if you're like, hey, I just want new flooring because I love new flooring, don't lay that on the house that the mistake was the house is a bad investment. If you were going to put it into your rent, if a house you rented and you're going to put in new flooring for your landlord, would you? Probably not. So you really have to treat it like the investment that it can be.
Yeah, that's really wise. I am on the fence about that because I know that there's two sides of it. When I bought my house, I sold a condo and I sold it after 2 years. I made like $100,000 on it because it was like the COVID upward trajectory of all of the housing in COVID. I am in an area that grows really quickly when it comes to real estate. I'm in the Raleigh-Durham area, and so I made quite a bit of money on that, but all of it went into the new house that I have. And I love my new house, but I spent a ton of money on this house. And part of it was, improvements, but I also had to get a new furnace, a new roof, new plumbing, new insulation, like all of that because it's a 100-year-old house. But it's still a choice I made. And I feel like you said, I'm going to own this house for 10 years. And over the long run, all of that is going to return back, I feel like. But it does make me wonder, if I did the math and I put all of that in the market, like what would that be? So I'm on the fence. I also love my house, so I don't care if I would have made more money in the stock market. I don't care.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I mean, there's an investment decision and there's a personal decision, and definitely, those have their two different values to them. And the nice thing about owning your home is you do get a lot of that home ownership flexibility as well. But I mean, again, in the houses that I ran this comparison on, I put on new roofs, new air conditioning, new furnace, new garage door opener, huge tree removals. I mean, I was doing a lot. I don't know how JL Collins he had like $7,000 of maintenance a year. I'm like, even like replacing all my major systems, I averaged out at like, it's 3,800 or something a year. It's like, I think that that there is just a lot of value for that long term, because you put in the new roof, but if you keep the house, it's basically a depreciation cost. It's not, oh my God, the roof cost me $13,000. It's, well, the roof lasts 30 years, and if I own the home for 30 years, well then it didn't really cost me that much per year.
Yeah, agreed. Also, depending on where you live, like there's some states that they give the renters the benefit, and then there's some states that give the landlords the benefit. And so, like, which state do you live in? I think it's more complicated than what some of the communities talk about. I think it's a very personal choice. And I think it's very dependent on where you live, what house you're buying, what you would be renting. And I think everybody should run the numbers for themselves. Okay, so let's move to the next topic. And what is your why of FI? Why did you want to retire? You said that you were with your son and you were like, I just want to stop working. Why is that? Let's dive deeper on what you were feeling during that time and what you were going through to make you feel that way.
My why is my health and my freedom of choice to pursue my interests. And both of these are very internally focused. When I say my health, one of my just challenges of me and my psychology is I always give priority to commitments I make to other people. So whether I've got a commitment at work or family or I'm volunteering, whenever I say, yeah, I'll do it, that's number one. So I won't leave work leave work on time to, go home and work out. That's just for me. Whereas I will, like, okay, well, I got to leave work because I'm coaching soccer, so I've got this commitment, so now I got to leave that. But if I have no other commitments, I'll stay in work because I've got this other commitment. And so this is just something that I've struggled with, is just I can't get past that commitment. And even after I left like my full career in 2020, I took a year and a half off. I was going to school, whatever, and then I'm going to go back to work and do personal financial education with the Department of Defense. And it's like, you know what? I'm only going to work 8 hours a day. I'm going to not work extra. I'm going to, we're going to enjoy the weekends, and, and this is like gravy money, and we'll just, travel even more. And I couldn't do it. I like day one, well, I need to learn the job, so I'll spend a little extra hours, and then I've got this project and I got this thing, and a lot of it was just I wanted to succeed. I wanted to do well. And I just kept working long hours. I'm like, oh, this is this is me, and I need to like take away some of my commitments. And that's a lot of what minimalism, letting go of the job has freed up the time, but it's also freed up my energy. Because even when I would get off work, I don't have time to like, I don't want to think anymore. I'd love to learn a language, but after work, I'm like, my brain's done. I'm not like going to start testing it on language skills. So things that I really wanted to do, working out, which takes time, I just that always got sacrificed.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talked about kind of this concept of external versus internal motivation. Like you said, you wouldn't leave work earlier on time to go work out because that's just for you. Whereas if you had other commitments, you would want to do that. And a lot of the time your commitments were work related. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Gretchen Rubin's 4 tendencies, but she talks about this a lot, how we have one or the other, external or internal motivations. And I am also like you, I am more externally motivated, meaning if there is somebody holding me accountable, then I will do the thing. So when I go to the gym, for example, I always try and meet the teacher in my class and meet other people in the class, because they're going to notice when I'm not there. And I'm going to, allow my internal anxiety to drive me to go to the gym, because I'm thinking, oh my God, they know I'm not there. And I really envy those people who have internal motivation. My partner does. Like, he can just come home and just start working out and just start stretching and just, whatever. And I'm like, how are you doing this right now? Like, you worked all day and you're sitting here like spending time on your health. Whereas I am like completely attached, on a cellular level to my couch right now. How are you doing this?
Even when I did have time, I didn't have the energy mentally or physically to then do the things that were high priorities for me. And this kind of goes back to that blog post where I just kind of wrote that minimalism changed who I am, and it really did, because I had like 20 things that were important-ish to me. Like, I want to do all these things, and I was dividing my resources among 20 different things, and I wasn't getting really good focus on any of them. And many of the top ones, like working out, kind of got the least resources, or studying a language, or some other stuff that, that's like, what are my goals in life and what do I want to accomplish? And so by just getting rid of my house and my chores that go with the house, and just starting saying no to commitments. I was on a couple of board of directors, they like, hey, invite you in. You feel like really, oh, that's great to be on the board. And they're great causes, but it's like, I need to free up the time and let go of the commitments. And since I've done that, I've read more books than I've ever read last year. I traveled more than I've ever traveled before last year. I've stretched and worked out more than I can't say more than ever, because I really used to run track a lot, but it's like the changes and visiting family and friends and the things that are most important to me, getting rid of those other commitments has now opened the door. And I don't have trouble with the motivation, as much to do these things, because now I've made space for them and I prioritize them, and I've gotten rid of these physical things that were like gnawing at me that I had to make physical and commitments. I mean, I've minimalized on both.
Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like, you started to really hone in on your values, what you really value. I mean, there are so many good causes out there, right? And we want to be able to give to all of them, but we can't. And so there is this concept of, you can do anything but not everything. It's very similar to Paula Pant saying you can afford anything but not everything. I also think you can do anything but not everything, and you have to weigh the pros and cons of everything. And it sounds like you got really good at honing in on, okay, what exactly do I want my life to be right now? Do I want this? No. Do I want this? Yes. And it sounds like you really perfected doing that. And I'm wondering if you can tell our community how you did that. Like, how did you decide what to drop and what to keep?
Yeah, part of it was just really, kind of listing out like, what are the things that are most important. And that can be a little bit of challenge, but so often, it's you don't recognize what you've committed to until you've like confronted the physical objects with them. And this is, again, I go back to minimalism. Like as we decided to get rid of all of our stuff, it's like, oh, I enjoy canning. I've got all this canning equipment, and I haven't canned it, but it's like I can a little, and I spend a little time on that. But then, oh, I've got cyclist gear, and I enjoy cycling, but it just turns out that canning's not in my top five, and cycling's not in my top five. And so, really, it was Oliver Berkman in his book 4,000 Weeks, where he shares a story about Warren Buffett, where Buffett says, do your top, 4 or 5 items, and then actively don't do your 6 through, X. Those are the ones that are actually keeping you, 6 is a good thing, cycling, but it's not the thing that it's going to keep me from doing 1 through 5. And so, so I just really actively got rid of all this stuff that went with cycling, went with canning, with my music. I was, well, I want to learn an instrument, but I didn't want to do that as much as these other items. So as I just got rid of the stuff, it truly felt freeing. Like, oh wow, I don't have that. There's less to clean, there's less to manage, there's less to store, there's less to work around. I don't know, it was just really freeing.
That's great advice. So listing out your top 10 values and priorities, and knowing that you can only do the top 5 and let the other 5 go is incredibly important to remember. But I also think you don't only have to do the top 5 forever. You're not committed for the rest of your life to only do these 5, right? You can bring in one of the others from the rest of your list and replace it with something in your top 5 if, at some point you're like, you know what, I want to pause here and I want to take on something else. And so I'm going to put this one on the back burner and move this up to the front. I mean, it's not like it's set in stone. You can always change things if you decide, you know what, I've learned French. I'm fluent now. This is no longer in my top 5. I want to keep practicing, of course, but you know what, now I'm going to move up photography or whatever. That was number 6. And I think that, realizing that and realizing you're not, in a box is also really freeing. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. What does FI look like for you? Like, you've already retired, your wife is retired. What does the other side look like for those of us who are still working 9 to 5s like me?
Yeah, I mean, overall, it's really, really good. I mean, when I walked away from my Pentagon job, I mean, I felt like Scrooge on Christmas morning. As giddy as a schoolboy, it felt like winning at the game of life, and I mean, it's almost been 4 years later and it still hits me that way. We will look at each other and go, I can't believe this is our life. It's like, so it's just a lot of different benefits. And I find being off rhythm with the work school schedule and it's mostly the school schedule is really what drives so much of like when people are able to do things. I mean, just going to the grocery store in the middle of a Monday when nobody else is there, it's just nice and relaxing. There's just not, there's just not the big lines or whatever. And we try to do our travel excursions. We're on the road. We're like, well, let's just do it on a Wednesday or Thursday instead of the weekend when the rest of Mexico City or wherever we are is, trying to pack it in as well. So, I mean, initially when I first retired, my wife was still working for a couple of years. And so, I just found like I was tied socially to the traditional schedule. So I think if you're like just somewhat by yourself and your partner's not retiring with you, I think there's an immediate challenge right there of just like, and with my friends, like nobody's bike riding with me at 10 a.m. or walking or doing whatever I'm doing at 10 a.m. because they're all working. So I still have to wait till 5 p.m. or whenever to like get together with friends for drinks or with my wife or, and we're still looking at weekends and, traditional time off. So since she's been retired too, and it's been great.
Did you try to make different friends, maybe some friends who were already retired, who were in your area to get together with?
As we decided to go nomadic traveling, it becomes very difficult to make new friends when you're only in a foreign country for a month and I don't know Bulgarian. But what we connected to before we started traveling was a Facebook group, Go With Less. You may have heard of Amy and Tim started this website, and they've got meetup groups. So we, have met up in just about every country we've been in. We'll find somebody else still. It's like going to a FI event, but it's a travel/FI event where, people with common interests, like, oh, you nomadically travel and so do I. And now you can just start talking and sharing travel tips, and you just instantly have this, connection with other people. So that's kind of helped with our social, and we just work really hard. We come back and visit the US at least a couple times a year. So instead of maybe kind of your lighter social that you would have on a regular basis, it's more like a deeper social. We've had several friends come meet us on the road, and we've, spent a couple weeks vacationing together. Well, they're vacationing, we're living out there, and they'll just join in. And we've had family come join us on the road. So that's been kind of one of the ways we've tried to keep, because the family and friend connections are really important. And a lot of this challenge with the friends is less about firing and more about the nomadic travel. I mean, if we still lived in our old house, we'd still see them on, nights and weekends when they were available.
That's incredible. So where did you guys travel to most last year?
Yeah, we started full-time travel in July. So we're coming up to our first full year of travel. So we've tried to do slow travel. So we try to do a month in places mostly. So, really quickly, month in Bulgaria, Greece, Morocco, Spain. Then we came back to the US, and see doctors too as well. And then we spent in Mexico, Oaxaca, Mexico City, Mazatlan, and Cabo. And then we've come back here to the Northwest, watch our daughter play ultimate in college, and she's about to graduate. And then it's off to Asia. And there's like 9 countries in Asia that we're going to go to. We're going to start in Singapore, Japan, Korea, Southeast Asia, and finish up with Indonesia.
Wow, that's really incredible. And are you documenting this anywhere?
We have a kind of a private Facebook group that just kind of close friends and family. Partly what I don't want to do is like every day kind of post in my regular Facebook, like, boy, look at this great thing today. So we really want to just, connect it with people that are really interested in us and what's going on. I mean, certainly if anybody, again, if somebody wants to reach out or whatever and see what we're doing, the Go With Less group is a great place to go and connect and get information. But I guess I don't know. I just want to be careful about just the dangers of Facebook, whatever. Just like, oh, look at, it's every day is a beautiful sunny day. I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, I brought my old self along. So Mr., anxiety prone is still, out here. And so, for some reason, I still have some anxiety dreams. I'm like, why do I have this? I don't work. I don't have deadlines tomorrow. I don't have whatever. Where is that coming from? And it's just broken me, but I'm not going to post about that. So it doesn't really show up. They're like, you're still you. I mean, we still do laundry and, it's, often hanging in our unit or whatever. And, it's still just dishes and day to day, because this is where we live. It's not vacation every day. It's, we got to find a place where it's comfortable that we can actually just read books. We're loving our time, up here in the Northwest as much as we loved our time in Bulgaria.
I get what you're saying, because a lot of the time when people post on social media, it's always the highlight reel. And it sounds like you want to kind of avoid doing that and say to people, like, my life is messy and I don't want you to have any other impression than the fact that I am a messy person just living in Bulgaria right now. So I'm not going to do that. So I really commend you for that. So I want to switch to this juicy topic that I really like, where you wrote a blog post where you said FI needs the RE, or meaning the financial independence community needs the retire early part. And I want to talk about this because I feel like because the FIRE movement has gotten so much flack from the media about the retire early part, it seems like we're kind of getting away from it because, as Brad has said before, Brad Barrett on the Choose FI podcast has said before, that I don't know anybody who's actually just retired and doesn't do anything. The thing is, though, there are folks out there who retired and don't work and don't want to work. I guess I would say, what's your argument for this? And then also a little bit of a challenge. How come your blog is not considered work to you?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I think part of it is like, what is our definition of work? And I think, the dictionary, it's like, well, it's just doing something for a purpose. I mean, it can be very broad, but when we all talk about work, we talk about paid work. Getting rid of the RE is a justification for people to continue to work. well, what is financial independence? Well, it's 25x your expenses. And when you reach that, you now have enough passive income to pay for all your expenses, so you don't have to work. But I decided to work anyway. And so I need to get rid of the RE because it doesn't feel like I'm following what I'm saying. And in my mind, it's like, well, let's stop letting the naysayers define our terms for us. It's financial independence, and it's the ability to retire early. It's the ability to have all options. One of those options is paid work. Who cares what other people say? It's like I have the ability to switch to any work I want. I can, cut back my hours. I can take a break. I mean, our community has such ingenuity to, all these different creative things, but it's kind of in our definition of what is FI. And when you listen to Brad or Polipant or these other ones, and you just listen to their description, they all go, well, there's this rule of thumb, and it's 25x you're expensive, and they bring you to the ability to retire early, and then we stop saying that we own the ability to retire early. It's like we retire early, and I guess I just get annoyed when there's like, well, if you don't work, you're going to sit on the beach and drink fruity drinks all day or eat Cheetos on the sofa all day. It's like, why are we perpetuating these binaries when I don't work for any money. My blog, I will never do any affiliate links. I will not try to get any money for it. I don't really advertise it. It's a repository of information so that I can say, have you heard about home exchanges? Hey, I've got this post if you want to read more about it. So I don't have to spend 30 minutes explaining it. I just need to get it down on paper. So if somebody says, well, why do you think that? Well, take a look at my formulas. And if they're wrong, I'd love to hear about it. It's really more of a place for just a creative outlet that nobody needs to read or look at or comment on or whatever. It's for me. If we got rid of the RE, we look like everybody else. So Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman and just regular certified financial planners, they all say the same stuff about how you budget and you spend less than you earn and you save and invest. Where the difference is we go, if you saved a lot, you could get options sooner. You could have the ability to no longer work. That sounds interesting. How do I do that? Well, look at this community and all the fabulous ideas we have. That's what's exciting and what makes everybody go, aha, holy cow, I know something that doesn't seem like other people know. And there's an excitement to it. I don't want to wait till I'm 65. I mean, 52 is pretty late in this community, but boy, leaving 17 years earlier than my, full retirement Social Security age, that feels like winning. I mean, I don't know. It's great. And I don't have to work, and I'm not sitting on the beach drinking fruity drinks or, eating Cheetos. I have a busy life. I still have so many things going on that I don't stretch every day like I should, like I would like to. I'm like, I'm already, even in my top 5, it kind of struggles to get stuff done because there's so many fabulous things to do and learn and follow my curiosity.
In my opinion, that is the hook of the financial independence retire early community, is the retire early part.
Yes.
I think that's what draws people in, is they're like, oh my God, I don't have to work for awful, evil corporate America forever. And sure, if we want to, be a little loosey-goosey with the term work, I mean, when I retire early, I will probably continue doing this podcast. I just want to stop working. Like, I want to stop working for another person. I want to stop making other people's dreams come true. And I want to make my dreams come true. And I feel like retiring early is a big part of that. And so I completely agree with you. And that is what drew me in. When I found it, I was like, oh my God, here it is. I don't have to work forever.
And I guess I just also wanted to say is you'll often hear the term like the soul sucking job or, the evil corporation. And when I went back to work, it was financial education for the Department of Defense military. It was a very, very rewarding job. I loved it. I was running my own blogs and podcasts and social media and worked with this great team. And we had a great mission. It was very rewarding, but it wasn't the top thing I wanted to do. And it was in the way of the top things I wanted to do. And so I let that go because now I'm busy doing these other completely non-work things, non-pay things. I mean, I don't know, do you consider brushing my teeth work? I mean, in the basic definition of work, I don't know, doing the dishes, I guess that's some work. I mean, but it's not paid work. And I have every option on the table. And it's just, it's one of those things where it's like, well, I guess I really push back on you have to be deprived to get to FI. to get to the retire early part, you have to deprive yourself. And so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just coast, or I'm going to barista, or I'm going to just not do that. I'm going to go slow. I mean, there's just all these variations. And I've never looked at it that way. It's like, well, using that entertainment coupon book, I still stayed in a hotel that was fun, and we still ate out and it was fun, and I spent less money. And I mean, you look at this community, you can spend less on cell phones, you can spend less on eating in general, you can spend less on travel. I mean, home exchange, travel points. We had these great European vacations for almost nothing. And it's the ingenuity. You can have a great, happy life. And oh, by the way, happy is not connected with the spending. Happy is connected with your family, your friends, you're having some purpose and interest. It's not necessarily spending money. And I just wish we'd separate that. Like, oh, I need to spend more, so I'm happier. Or spend less and you'll be happier.
Yeah. And also, where does it end? If you need to spend more to be happy, then you have to spend more and more and more and
Right.
more to be happy, because that's how the human brain works, And yeah, I agree. I think the strength of this community is in our ability to think outside the box, to understand that we can travel, and we can travel really nicely if we think differently about it. I was just listening to Paula Pant's podcast, and she had the points guy on, and he was talking about how he flew to, I forget where, I think it was Japan, first class with his son and his nanny, and they were like able to shower and stuff. And he's like, this is like a $20,000 ticket that I got with points, because he knows how to hack the system. Now, granted, he owns a very large company now that has 140 people who work for him. But I mean, there are ways to do this. You don't have to go to that level, but there are ways that you can hack the system and still have, I would say, a luxurious life for not a lot of money if you really know how to think outside the box. And I think that traditional financial advice stays within a box. And that's what I, kind of rail against on my own Instagram, is that, I think that you should follow people and listen to people who know how to think outside the box, instead of just the financial advisors who were taught a very specific way of looking at money and looking at investing, and will also try to sell you whole life insurance. But if you listen to other people who, think outside the box, they can tell you things about, HSA shoeboxing and traveling with points and points hacking and things like that. And I am very much all about the think outside the box, and I think that's what our community does best. So I totally agree with you. Thank you for sharing that. That was so great. I will obviously link your whole blog, this article, everything in the show notes. Almost everything we've talked about, I'm going to link in the show notes for everybody. So don't worry if you heard about something in this episode, it's going in. I've been writing it down the whole time. But I want to move on to if you have any recent or current struggles that you're going through right now, and if they have been affecting your FI lifestyle or anything like that.
I think really my struggles were around the pulling the trigger on fire to retire early. That was really where I struggled a lot, because we were fully FI, the numbers were all there, and we just had to get through that scarcity mindset I'm kind of talking about, just that what ifs. What if I die early? What if the stock market is prolonged crash? What about the kids' college? What about the long-term care? What about aging parents? And so we just had to work through scenario after scenario after scenario, and just, we've got an answer for everything. And again, this community has been great to help you think through, one, possible solutions, and two, not worrying so much about, the nth little tiny percentage of something that could happen. I mean, just, I kind of go to the thinking in bets, 90% is really good, so let's stop trying to get 100%. So that was part of it. The other part was my identity, because I mean, you just have this work-based identity. The first question is well, what do you do? I mean, who are you? Well, I'm Air Force officer. I work for the Department of Defense. So, I'm the director of this program. And it's okay, well, how do I let that go? And not really other people, although I project it onto other people. It's really, what's my identity? What do I think about myself? What do I tell people when I'm leaving? What are you going to do? So I went to being a student. Well, I applied for graduate school and I was a full-time student. So when I'm leaving, I'm I was going to be a full-time student, and the whole world just goes, great. We all value full-time students. That still fits in our paradigm, and so that works. And really, that was for me. That was my transitional crutch to get through. I did a year of graduate school and just went, I don't want these papers to have to write and the deadlines and whatever. I can study and learn, you know, without it. So yeah, I let that go, and then I just fully embrace retired. I'm retired, and now I have no problems, telling anybody about that. So those are kind of the bigger challenge, especially with my wife still continuing to work. That was a little bit of a challenge. Yeah, I think those are kind of the main things. And I kind of mentioned this, keeping the strong connections with our friends. But that's really more about full-time travel choice than so much, the retiring choice.
Something that Alan Donegan said, I went to the Fire in Vegas event that happened in April. He was like, when people ask me what I do, sometimes I'll tell them like that I'm, the rebel entrepreneur, founder, or whatever. But sometimes I'll just say I'm unemployed and homeless, because they travel all the time. So they don't have a home base. They're always traveling, right? So what are some of your current wins right now then?
Well, okay, there's a lot of them. Quitting work just kind of allowed room for all these other higher priorities to take precedence. So, that's just been a big part of it. Is instead of trying to just vacation like a 2-week millionaire, now we go slow. We don't have to pack it all in. We're not country counting or trying to like see everything for one day. For us, it's slow, deep travel. And that's just been just fabulous. It's just taken the pressure off of, you got to see it all, because the world's way bigger than my lifetime anyway. And embracing minimalism, I keep mentioning this. It was a huge win. As I just kind of talked about, it really helped me focus on the most important things that I worked on, that I do. And a big win is more relaxation. So I just kind of alluded to this, even though, I am the same stress-prone person that I was before, but by reducing the stress triggers, the work demands, office politics, driving in traffic, weekly house upkeep responsibilities, conflicting commitments, by just kind of reducing those, I'm able to relax more. So it's the same me, but it's different external inputs. And that's just been a great change.
That's amazing. Thank you. Would you mind sharing a life hack recommendation or learning that you have with the community so that we can learn from you?
Sure. So for a life hack, we invented a fun way to amp up a family staycation. And this really started in Christmas of 2017. We decided to stay put in Arlington, Virginia for our holiday break. And just kind of like, well, what are we going to do? Was like, well, we came up with what we call our family adventure days. And so each family member is assigned a day that's not already booked. So it's not Christmas Day. Nobody gets New Year's Eve. So those other days in between when you're usually off. And so what each person needs to do is they're in charge of the whole day. And so they have to cook a meal and do the dishes. They have to pick where to go out to eat for one meal. They then need to just figure out all the entertainment for the day. And so that could be a museum, an escape room, a cookie bake-off contest, a hike, a board game, a movie, whatever they want for entertainment, they decide. And everybody else in the family, their job is to willingly and happily participate. It's been great. I mean, I got to tell you, we have done it every year since, and it's like there's now also this great reminiscent things. Oh, do you remember when we did X or Y and we found this food, and everybody just does their own research and they're just trying to make a great day. And then at the same time, I mean, I've got my day I'm in charge. I'm excited to like take the whole family around, but then 3 other days, I don't have any decision making to do. When do I show up? 10 a.m. I'll be there with the car ready to drive to wherever. And it also just gives you relaxing days that are like pre-planned that somebody else is doing. And every so often somebody will go like, well, what do you guys want to eat? And everybody will respond, it doesn't matter. Whatever you decide, we're going to eat it. And it, so I highly recommend that. So it's really made like staycations, because Christmas is an expensive time to travel. And we lived on the other side of the country for most of our family. So it was hard to get back home. And this was just a great way to do that. Now, of course, our kids were older. So if your kid's, 3, probably not, but they could pick the menu, or something. I don't know. There's probably some fun ways to do that. So that's my life hack. Kind of my recommendation. And that is, if possible, don't pay for lodging twice. if you for the same night. So, we own a home and then you go on vacation and you buy a hotel room and you're basically paying for both beds for the same night. And so our hack for that is doing home exchanges. I've kind of alluded to this before, but since 2013, we've done 10 home exchanges, Europe, Canada, Iceland. It's a lot of where the focus is because there's a lot of home exchange activity over there. And so we don't, you don't pay for that hotel room, but not only do you save money, you also have this great interaction with the local family because you're exchanging with another family. So we'll take each other out to dinner. Their parents will take us out to dinner. We'll get toured around in different places. We've just had these amazing experiences by by being immersed in with kind of a local family. I mean, you really become friends with these families. I did write a blog post on there about tips for home exchanges on my website. But now that we don't have a house, and we're fully nomadic, it's pretty rare that we pay for a night of lodging twice because we don't have our house. And then the learning, this is kind of just related to what we were talking to earlier. And I've really just come to this conclusion really in the last year that I'm kind of switching from pursuing happiness to focusing on contentment. I've just found that happiness just is too much weight in my wardrobe, my meal, or whatever, wherever I'm staying that night, doesn't need to make me happy. It just needs to fulfill its job. So, I mean, I just find that happiness is inherently defined by unhappiness. It's like you have to have one for the other. And I don't know, it's just by pursuing contentment, it addresses that hedonic adaptation problem that the pursuit of happiness tends to create. So my wife and I, we just kind of determined like, what is enough? Enough money, enough stuff, enough commitments. And we're content with that. And I couldn't be happier.
That sounds so great. Thank you so much for providing us all three. That's a wrap for this episode, but I want to know where people can find you.
Sure. So if anybody would like to reach out to me, you just leave me a comment anywhere on my blog. It's called livingthefilife.com. So instead of living the high life, just replace the H with an F. So livingthefilife.com. And again, there's 13 articles currently. And I recommend get a news feed reader that just will alert you when there's a new one, because I'm not a, every week post. Sometimes I posted 2 in 1 week and then 3 months later, nothing. So it's kind of just a place where I, just throw out thoughts, and it's kind of a repository.
That's awesome. I love it. And I've already dove in on the FI Needs RE article, and it was really great. So I definitely recommend everybody check it out. Of course, it'll be in the show notes for the links. So thank you so much, Justin, for being here.
Thanks, Megan. It's been awesome to meet you.
Thanks for listening to the EverydayFI podcast. If you like the show, please subscribe in your favorite podcast player and leave a review. I love hearing from you. If you want more, follow me on Instagram at @alatemoney, where I post daily insights on how to reach financial independence. See you next time as we continue to go down the path to financial freedom.